It says that not only do infinite parallel universes exist, but they can also interact with each other.
These bubble universes can't come into contact with each other.
The presence of more parallel universes has always intrigued humanity. I'm talking about multiple universes.
It's a place where people end up accidentally because it's a parallel universe.
That the plane he was on went through a kind of portal that connected these two worlds. Do you believe in parallel universes? Do you believe in the existence of parallel universes, parallel realities with people living lives very similar to ours, with places that look like the ones in our reality, but with small changes, tiny differences? If you don't believe in that, in today's video I might shake your beliefs a little bit. I'm Carol Capel, your favorite visitor from a parallel dimension. Welcome to another video here on the channel. You always ask me to tell everything about this case here on the channel, so here we go. A man was stopped by the immigration department at Tokyo airport. When he presented his passport, the authorities freaked out because the passport was legitimate. The only problem is that the country that issued his passport never existed. Never? Have you ever heard of the many worlds theory? This theory explains how our universe branches into another parallel universe. Just like in that Marvel series, the one about Thor's brother, Loki. Loki is a god from Norse mythology. He is the god of mischief, trickery, and fire, but he is also connected to magic and can take any form he wants. So then, since there are countless parallel universes, and according to the many worlds theory, in some of these parallel universes, there is a reality where the dinosaurs were not extinct. There is a reality, a parallel universe where you are not ugly. Look how nice that is. Ah, I wish I could go there. Ah, I wish I could be from that reality. But until then, no one knew that these parallel universes could interact with each other. Not until the year 2014, when science proposed this many worlds theory. And it should actually be called the theory of many interacting worlds. This theory says that not only do infinite parallel universes exist, but they can interact with each other. This theory would explain, for example, that case of Lorena Garcia. Have you ever heard about it? She woke up one beautiful day and she was wearing a different pajama. She went to work, and when she got there, there was someone else working at her desk. She was still working in the same office building but for another company, and she had a boss she had never seen in her life. When she got home, who was waiting for her at home? Her ex-boyfriend, guys. I think that's not a story about a parallel dimension traveler. No, that's a nightmare story. Imagine if you get home and you find your ex there, and this ex wasn't an ex, he was her current boyfriend. Exactly, that's really heavy. But there was another story, okay, about parallel universes. In 1851, a man named Joseph Foreign was found walking the streets of Frankfurt in Germany. When the authorities asked this man for his documents, he said he came from a country called Laxaria or Laxaria. I don't know how you say the name of that country. And guys, his document was issued by this country, Laxaria. When they showed him a map, asking him to point out where his country was, the man looked at the map and said, "I don't recognize this map. This map is wrong." According to him, the names of the continents on planet Earth weren't the ones written on the map, but rather Sacria, Aflar, Aslar, Auslar, and Euplar. Another incident similar to this happened in 1905. A man was arrested in Paris for stealing bread. And when he was arrested, he spoke a language that no one knew. And then he said that he was from the country of Lisbaya. And people started to think that he was from Lisbon, and they called a translator, a Portuguese interpreter, to help him. The Portuguese translator and interpreter went there to talk to the man who didn't speak Portuguese. The man spoke in a language that was likely not from Earth, possibly an alien tongue. Maybe it was Lisbon, yes, but from an alternate reality. But none of these stories I've told you have as much validation as the story of the visitor from Taured. Or Taured. I don't know exactly how to pronounce the name of this thing. This mystery has lasted for more than 70 years and no one can explain it. Are you ready? In 1952, Japan was finally free from American occupation. And because of that, many people started traveling to Japan for business, mainly because Japan established itself as an extremely technological place and technology companies went there. Because of these opportunities in the technology market, many people moved there and many people arrived every day through Haneda Airport, which is in Tokyo. But then, on a certain day in 1954, more precisely in July 1954, the airport was crowded, immigration was busy, and at the immigration control, a man arrived, a middle-aged man, Caucasian, brown hair with a neatly trimmed mustache. He arrives and says, "Hi, how are you? Here is my passport for my visit." When he said, "Here's my passport," the immigration officer was shocked because this man had a passport issued by a country that doesn't exist. And you know what's worse? The passport was legitimate. The man's name was Broderick Janasfer. He was born on September 11th and he claimed to be from the United Kingdom of Taured. Taured is a fictional country that does not exist now and has never existed in the past. Several immigration officers arrived to try to understand what was happening there. This man was taken to a small room there in immigration. And then they had the idea to get a map and ask the man to show which country it was. When they took the map and opened it, the man pointed to the country Andorra, which is not a country, it's a principality located between Spain and France. He was shocked, saying the country wasn't called Andorra, but Taured, where he was from. He spoke Japanese, but he had a bit of a French accent, which, given the proximity of the region, could make sense, right? He said that the kingdom of Taured had been established hundreds of years ago, that he didn't understand that this was all a big joke, and that he visited Japan frequently. He had several Japanese stamps in his passport, and all the stamps were legitimate, that he had been in Japan 3 weeks ago and none of this had happened. He hadn't faced any problems. To make matters worse, inside this man's wallet there were banknotes issued by the National Bank of Taured. He also had a traveler's check, which was common in the past. That's the kind of check for travel that you would issue in one country and then cash in another. And this check was issued by a National Bank of Taured. The authorities then began to suspect that this man was a spy. And he wasn't arrested, but rather he was supposed to remain in custody until this situation was clarified. So he didn't go to jail, but he went to a hotel that was inside the airport, and 2 law enforcement officers stayed at the man's hotel door 24 hours a day. The hotel was locked, the window was closed, there was no way for him to leave, the floor was very high, and this man stayed there in the room. Nothing strange occurred during the man's 24-hour stay in the room. He ordered room service. In other words, he ordered food, right? And he complained that he had a bit of a headache. But the next day, when the authorities knocked on the door and said, "Hey sir, are you there?" They opened the door to the room and the man had completely disappeared. As if all that wasn't enough, his passport, along with the documents held by immigration at Haneda Airport, also disappeared. And there are obviously several theories trying to explain what happened here with this man. The most famous of them says that the plane he was on went through some kind of portal that connected these 2 worlds, thanks to the many worlds theory I told you about at the beginning of this video, and this man crossed over to this side. But the rest of the plane didn't, only him. But that's just a theory. No one really knows what happened there. But now the question that won't go away is this story true? Because looking at it like this, it's hard to believe that this story is true, right? So I went to do some research and I found out that this story is an urban legend that circulated on the internet a long time ago, but this urban legend came from somewhere, didn't it? This story was created by someone, and as unbelievable as it seems, it's not fictional. The oldest version of this story is from 1988 and it's in a book called Directory of Possibilities. And this book tells this story, but not only that, this book has a clipping of a newspaper article published in the city of Tokyo about this story. So, is the story true or not true? We'll never know. But everything suggests that this story came from an official source. Yes, the only thing we don't know is for what purpose, right? I know you like abduction stories, I know, and that's why I bring them here. But this one, guys, this one really gets to me. You know those stories that just make you feel bad? It's this one. It's that story you already know, okay? About fell, you know what, you know where, you can fill in the blanks. The aunties don't like it when I swear, so I won't say it. A kiss for the aunties. In May 2007, a girl only 14 years old completely disappeared in the city of Jackson, Wyoming in the United States. Her name was Patricia Lyons. The day before she disappeared, she was studying to prepare for a test she had at school the next day. And then she finished studying, brushed her teeth, put on her pajamas, said goodnight to her father and mother, went up to her room, closed the door, went to sleep, and disappeared from inside her room. The person vanished from inside her own room. Keep that information in mind. Her parents were shocked. They started searching the whole house because the whole house was completely locked, right? Everything locked, windows and doors locked. The keys in their usual place. The girl simply went through the wall, disappeared from inside her own room. It's a small town, guys. Everyone found out about the disappearance of this girl. Everyone got together to look for her. And the next day, not only did the whole town already know, but the entire state of Wyoming knew as well. She was the famous Amber Alert. Carol, what is this Amber Alert? It's an alert that exists in the United States on a national level. When a child, a teenager, or even an adult goes missing, they issue this alert and it goes to all registered phones in the United States. It's so that if anyone has any information, they can pass it on to the police. When I lived in the United States, I used to get a lot of Amber Alerts. It was every day, and honestly, I've never seen a place where so many children go missing like in the United States. Something is going on there that I don't know about. Or actually, maybe I do, right? But I can't talk about it. There are other reasons, besides alien abduction, for people to disappear in the United States. But I've never even mentioned this, okay guys? And you've never heard it here. On the fourth day, a friend of the missing teenager confided to the missing girl's mother and father that Patricia had told her she was receiving telepathic messages in her head, voices in her head. And these voices in Patricia's head coincided with another, even more bizarre fact. 2 weeks before she completely disappeared, she had been admitted to the city's central hospital with very severe headaches and bleeding from her nose and mouth. The doctor at Jackson Hospital who examined the girl said there was no medical reason for her to be having these headaches and nosebleeds. He did a general checkup on the girl and she was healthy. After a week of searching for the girl, her parents received a message from her. She wrote a message from an unknown number saying she was in Kirkland Lake in Ontario from Wyoming. The girl traveled to another country, she crossed the border, she went to another country, she passed through 13 states in her pajamas without a passport and without remembering anything that had happened. How? Guys, the girl disappeared from her own room and ended up in Canada. Do you understand? The police couldn't believe it, actually. No one could believe it. I don't believe this story. The Canadian police were called, and Patricia, there in Canada, was examined by several doctors, several psychiatrists, and she showed no signs of dehydration, no injuries on her body. She was 100% healthy and had a lapse, a loss of memory for a week. But little by little, hours after this girl was found, right after she had seen those doctors and everything, she started telling the police and the doctors that she had been taken to a place called AWE, and that this place was an alien base. Look, I don't know if this is okay for you because you think the story is really crazy, but get ready because this is going to get worse to a level you're not prepared for. I don't think I am either. She told the police that for 2 months she kept receiving messages in her head from a voice that spoke down to her. That they were telepathic messages from beings who spoke different languages. And that they talked to her in her own language, that is, in English. But when they talked among themselves, she couldn't understand what they were saying, because they spoke a strange language. She said that on the night she disappeared, she was in her room, sleeping peacefully with the peace of Christ. And suddenly she was awakened by a voice that came from above, just like the voices in her head. And when she opened her eyes, she wasn't in her room anymore. She was now, this is the part that, for me, is the worst. When she opened her eyes, she was on a shelf in her room, but not on the outside, on the inside. Do you understand, guys? The girl woke up and she ended up inside the wall. According to her, that niche she had in the wall, a kind of shelf, was from her room, but at the same time it wasn't her room. It was as if everything had been reversed. The girl ended up inside the wall, but in a reverse room that existed in her house. The girl ended up inside the wall in a parallel reality, which doesn't exist in real life. It's hard for me to explain what I want to explain. That's it, in short. She said that this niche, this shelf that was on the wall, was different, and she found a tube with several holes through which she went down this shelf without understanding anything at all. In those holes that existed inside this tube, there were other people sleeping, and believe it or not, other beings too. It was a tube she was going down. I saw her interview, and there were holes like this, and in each hole she passed, there was a person, a child, or a creature sleeping. Are you keeping up? I'm already lost myself. And then she felt like she was caught, pulled by an invisible hand. And this invisible hand took her to a place that was oval, round, with some parts full of holes on top. And this part had a mezzanine. On this mezzanine there were several beings with an octopus-like shape watching her. And that's where, guys, with the octopus-like being, things got intense for me. Did I tell you that I was scared of this story? Yeah, it was when she said they were beings that looked like octopuses and squids that things got weird for me too. I don't know if I've ever told you about a bizarre experience I had with a being that looked kind of like an octopus. I'll keep this information private for now and reveal it at the end of the video. And precisely because of that experience, when I was doing the research for this video, I got extremely scared. I said, no way, this can't be happening. And it's not just Patricia, okay? Other people have already had abduction experiences with octopus beings. It wasn't an abduction for me. I'll explain soon. Just wait. Patricia's story is nearly finished. Going back to Patricia's story here, she said that these beings, which looked like octopuses or squids, would change color, going from green to red, and that they would talk to each other while looking at her. She said it was a very strange feeling, that she didn't need to breathe in that environment, that it was as if she had been stopped in time where her diaphragm didn't move, she didn't feel oxygen coming in, didn't feel any gas exchange. She said it was a place where breathing wasn't necessary. About 20 of these beings were on this platform, watching her behavior and talking among themselves. She said that one of these beings came down from this mezzanine, opened up a kind of map which wasn't made of paper, it was another material with several symbols, and asked her to show on that map, speaking in her language, where she was from. And then she looked at that map, didn't recognize any of those drawings at all, and couldn't identify where she was from. Then everything went black. She doesn't remember anything else. She only remembers waking up inside a tube, which she described as a glass tube, where several lights passed through this tube in a kind of scanning. She said that hair, eyelashes, and pieces of her nails were taken by another one of those beings who entered the tube to take her things. And after that happened, it cuts again, everything goes black, Windows blue screen. She found herself in pajamas on a sidewalk in that city of Kirkland Lake in Canada. She traveled 1,100 kilometers, went through this whole hallucinogenic experience in pajamas, without a passport and without anyone. There was no kidnapper, no responsible person, nothing. She simply arrived in Canada. She disappeared from her house and she showed up in Canada. I went after the whole story of this girl. I read the doctor's reports. I saw the police reports. I even saw an interview with her father. And everyone is very consistent in the story. Everyone is absolutely sure that this girl was indeed abducted by an unknown entity, because the nature of the story is very shocking. The girl went through several exams and including several memory regressions, and in all of these regressions, she confirms the story. In the same order, everything exactly right, as if the story had been programmed into her head to be told that way. The girl went back home, tried to live a normal life, but in 2011 she disappeared again, and under the same circumstances, okay? In a completely unexplained way. As if all that wasn't enough, guys, this time she never came back. We're in 2023. And the girl never came back. She's disappeared for good now. The most recent information about her is an interview with her father, Michael Lyons, from 2018. That interview is on YouTube. And guys, her father's interview was the worst thing for me because the interview shocked me even more. You know those interviews we watch with parents of missing people where the person is desperate looking for their daughter? In her father's case, no. Her father is fully aware of where she is and openly says that if it's better for her, she should stay there. Her father says she's working at an alien base. And how does he know that? Because he receives telepathic messages from the beings. And he says that when he sleeps, he goes there to meet her. Guys, look how crazy this is. The whole family is already convinced. And the whole family doesn't have any history or any disorder, no mental disorder. This story shocked me on every level you can imagine. And why did it shock me? Because of the contact with octopus-like beings, right? And now I'm going to tell you my short and quick story, but it's a sad one. I had a friend from school, we were really close, and she had a country house. So at the end of the year, for parties, weekends, and holidays, we would go to her country house and stay there. There was a pool, a soccer field, games, yay. One beautiful night at her country house, we were all there. Me, her, a bunch of cousins, a bunch of uncles, dad, mom, grandma, and grandpa, everyone sitting there on a ledge like this. I'll try to draw it. It was a house in the center with a porch all around the country house, and at the end of this porch, so we were sitting here, and over there facing the porch, imagine an orchard at the end with lots of fruit trees, and everything was dark back there at the end of the orchard. And me, her, and two of her little cousins, kids, I was a teenager, they were kids, sitting here facing that orchard, playing dominoes, cards, bingo, those kinds of games we used to play back when cell phones didn't exist. And then suddenly I feel her cold hand holding me like this, saying, "Look," she just said, "Look." I looked over at the orchard and I think I saw one of the scariest things. Oh, it's even making me feel hot. One of the scariest things I've ever seen in my life. It was a creature, not a humanoid, more like an octopus-like being. Well, at least that's how I described it. It wasn't green or anything, it was white. And I didn't see the head, okay? I only saw from here down, they were tentacles that passed by and floated there in the orchard. It wasn't like the creature was walking in the orchard. It was like it was passing by that window at the end of the hallway with that orchard. And then when I saw it, it was really quick. The kids who were here next to me, two boys, started screaming, started crying, and then everyone got up from their chairs and everyone went to see, and there was nothing there. There was nothing at the end of the hallway. And then that left me so shaken, so scared that she and I used to sleep in the same room, right? I spent the whole night awake with her. She did too. You know, when you just can't sleep, when you're traumatized. We just looked at each other, talking about what that could have been, because in fact only she and I and the 2 kids saw that. The others ran out screaming because of the scream the others let out there. But what was that? We still haven't been able to come up with an answer because we're still friends to this day. In fact, if you're watching me, kisses, Vi, I miss you. But it's something that made me say, girl, what happened here? So when I got back home, back to São Paulo, I went to tell my mom what had happened. And when I started telling my mom, I cried. You know when you're so scared of something that when you go to tell someone, you just cry? Yeah, so my mom was already like, it's because you don't pray. That's what happens when you lack God. Anyway, Mom thinks I was really disturbed by Patricia's story because there are so many reports of people who were abducted and brought back who talk about the existence of these octopus-shaped beings. I'm not saying that what I saw was an octopus-shaped being. That's not it, okay? I'm not trying to make something up that doesn't exist. But what I'm trying to say is that it shocked me because of the experience I had, and it also shocks me that there are several people who say and report that they've had experiences with octopus-like beings. I want to know what you think about this story, what you think about Patricia's abduction story. Comment everything down below. Have you ever watched Stranger Things in your life? This video here is not in any way an advertisement for the series because it doesn't need it, right? Actually, you've already said that. And what does it remind us of the most? What could remind us more of opening a portal to hell than that Netflix series, Stranger Things? If you've never watched it, what's your problem? It's a worldwide hit. Everyone has already seen it. But in case you haven't watched it, I'll give you a quick summary of the part that really matters so you can understand this video. Stranger Things, the series, tells the story of a secret government project that used children to conduct bizarre experiments in telekinesis and telepathy. These children, who were very skilled and had special abilities, were studied in a not-so-ethical way, if you know what I mean, by the United States government in a secret laboratory in the city of Hawkins. And then they did things they shouldn't have, and they opened a portal between this reality and a parallel reality, very similar to the biblical hell. Very much like a kind of hellish reality, full of bizarre creatures. And after that portal was opened, the creatures from there came here, the creatures from here went there, and several people went missing, several people disappeared, other people died, turning our reality here into real chaos, because dimensions aren't supposed to interact, right? In short, very briefly, that's the story. Then you stop, look at this story and say, wow, how can this story be real? That doesn't exist, or does it? It does exist, and I'm going to prove it to you. Have you ever heard of Project Stargate? I can't go into too many details, into too many specifics about what this project really was, conducted by the CIA and the American government, because I've had videos in the past where I talked about the disturbing experiments they conducted, and those videos of mine were taken down from the platform. But Project Stargate is a pretty discreet name for a secret project by the CIA and the American government where they had the idea of developing psychic abilities in several people. The project started in 1978, but they managed to hide its existence until 1990 when a public outcry caused the project to end. This project isn't very different from those projects we see happening in Stranger Things. In the first season, for example, 11 went through several bizarre tests, remember? The story of Stranger Things starts happening in 1983, and coincidence, or maybe not such a coincidence, it was in 1983 that the projects from Project Stargate started to get too strange to keep going. If you get my drift, I'm hinting at something without stating it directly. And now I'm going to introduce you to the real-life 11. And now meet Nina Koladina, who is the real-life 11. Have you ever wondered why the experiments in Stranger Things conducted with the children are called Project Nina? Well, they're called Project Nina because of Nina, the real-life Nina. She was Russian and she went to fight in the war in World War II against the Germans. When she came back, she was highly decorated and all that. She was a war hero. Then she got married, and it was after she got married that things started to get really strange in her life. She had a nervous breakdown and was admitted to an institution used to treat patients with mental disorders. Gradually, inside that institution, the doctors and nurses began to realize that Nina wasn't a sick person, but rather that she had psychic powers. She possessed strange powers, including telekinesis and telepathic communication. Her similarities to 11 from Stranger Things were purely coincidental, right? Now we're going to get into an even more delicate case whose name is appearing on the screen because I can't even say it here. I've already had a video deleted about this topic, the CIA's mind control program. I have a full video on a completely random platform with no algorithm just about this project, and I'll leave the link to this video down below in the pinned comment. I can't even put it in the description. The only thing I can say about this project here on YouTube is that it conducted immoral and illegal experiments on people. These were unethical and extremely dangerous experiments that started happening in 1953. And the experiment lasted until 1970. In the first season of Stranger Things, we saw Dr. Brenner conducting various experiments on 11 and her mother. In the fourth season, we understand that it wasn't just 11 who went through these experiments, but there were other children as well. The idea of the series is that 11's mother was part of this American government experiment, and because she was tested and went through several strange things, after all, it's Stranger Things, right? Her daughter 11 was born with special powers. 11 in the series has the ability of telepathy and telekinesis, right? And all these abilities, along with even stranger ones, were tested in real life on Earth within that government experiment. Even though this project and its documents remain top secret, from time to time, a part of the project, some document, ends up leaking from the CIA. And these documents are on the internet. You just have to search for the name of the project and you'll find them. In 1973, Richard Helms, who was the former director of the CIA, stated that all the documents about the project had been destroyed. However, in a twist of fate, in 1977, more than 20,000 documents about this project were discovered. The remaining information was classified for a long time, and in 2001 they said it would be released. But the information was hidden until 2018 when it was finally released. The information is incomplete. Several parts of the documents are blacked out or missing, or the subject doesn't make sense. I read many parts of the document, that's why I'm telling you that there's information missing there. Just so you have an idea of what was going on there, I read some parts of the document, and the mildest part I found, which I can mention here in this video, is that they managed to put neural implants in the heads of 6 dogs. And they managed to control these dogs by remote control. It worked. The dogs were controlled by remote control. The question is, did this project really end? Or are they continuing these strange experiments secretly? But wait, there's more. Do you remember the portals? Do you really think dimensional portals are just things from science fiction movies? So now sit down and cry and come with me to learn about Project Montauk. The CIA and the United States government have another top secret project. This project took place at the Montauk Air Force Base in the United States in the state of New York. The witnesses who experienced this project have been talking about what happened there since 1980. And the amount of documents and evidence is unfortunately undeniable, uncontestable, and irrefutable. It's impossible to deny the existence of this project. Why? Evidence and documentation exist. And against facts, there are no arguments. The place investigated and conducted experiments related to time travel, interdimensional travel, teleportation of people, mind control, and contact with creatures from other dimensions. And all of this is documented? And do you still think it's fiction? All these claims I'm telling you about are documented in the book The Montauk Project, and I strongly recommend that you read this book so you can understand what really happened there. The equipment used in those experiments that took place in Montauk, New York, was destroyed by the scientists for exactly the same reasons we discussed here in that video where we talked about European Organization for Nuclear Research, which aired last Friday. This equipment could cause a rupture in the membrane that separates this dimension we inhabit from the many other infinite dimensions that exist in the universe, causing a collapse in space-time. In the Stranger Things series, we see how the opening of this portal affects an entire town. But as the seasons go by, we start to realize that the threat is no longer just in the small town of Hawkins. Now, the opening of this portal threatens the entire planet. Pay close attention to the movies and fiction series you've been watching, because these series and movies are showing things that have already happened here on planet Earth or that will happen in the near future. But in the end, everything will connect, I swear, I promise. Last week I was in Norway, more specifically in the city of Tromsø, the world capital of the Northern Lights. I saw reindeer, I saw sled dogs, I saw whales, and I saw many auroras. But it was something I saw in the city that woke me up from the matrix I was living in. In fact, this story here is one you won't hear on any other channel anywhere else. You can watch tons of videos about the Northern Lights, but no video will tell you what I'm here to tell you in this video today. So sit down, get ready, grab some popcorn so you don't bite your nails, because this is going to be a mystery story. Almost like a movie. And what if I told you that the Northern Lights are portals to other dimensions? Well, there's a sci-fi series called His Dark Materials. By the way, if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend it. This isn't an ad for the series, especially because in this video I'm going to talk about, mention, and recommend several other types of content for you to watch. Series, movies, etc. So it's not advertising. In this series, His Dark Materials, they look for Northern Lights to open portals to parallel dimensions. I recommend that you watch it, then come back to this video to tell me what you thought. There's a very deep message that's between the lines. Considering that, and precisely a week after viewing the Netflix series 1899, you know what I mean? I arrived in Tromsø, really excited to see the Northern Lights. On the first night, I already saw them. It's a crazy thing they have in that city. I loved it. The next day, when I woke up, I went looking for something to eat. I started walking around the city looking for a bakery. And that's when I started to realize that I was trapped inside a simulation. First I said the next day, but there is no day. Let's start there. During the winter months, the city experiences a phenomenon called polar night, which seriously is really crazy. The polar night is a night that lasts more than 24 hours, and this phenomenon only occurs in the polar regions, that is, the regions defined by the Arctic Circle. Tromsø is located 5 degrees further north than the Arctic Circle, so the sun doesn't rise there, the sun just passes along the horizon, and all we see at this time of year is 40 minutes of a sunset. It's as if it came out, but it really didn't. But on the other hand, in the summer, precisely because of its location, the opposite also happens, meaning they have 24 hours of sunlight. As soon as I arrived, I began experiencing the initial symptoms of the polar night. I thought it was a joke, but it really wasn't. Since our bodies and our circadian rhythm are used to the sun rising and to light, when there's no sunrise, when there's no light, our biological clock gets completely messed up. Because in your head and for your brain it's nighttime, you have to sleep, right? On the first day I felt nauseous, had a terrible headache, and was very tired. It felt like I had carried, I don't know, the whole city on my back. By the third day, the symptoms started to get a little better. But I'm already back and I'm still a mess. Seriously, guys, it's really weird to sleep at night, wake up at night, and have to do everything at night. Eating meals at odd times, like lunch or breakfast at night, confuses the body's natural rhythm. It's cool, but it's weird. It feels like the days never end. It feels like the nights never end. And it doesn't feel like I stayed there for a week. It feels like I was there for one day. That lasted, I don't know, 190 hours. We spent 7 days and 6 nights there, but it felt like I only spent one day. From the day I arrived until the last day, it was the same day. And then, guys, when I managed to sleep, my dreams were really messed up because poor melatonin, it was being produced in huge amounts, right? It was a mess of dreams, guys, inside my head, like I was dreaming several versions of myself, but all in one night. I can't explain it. Even the dreams were multi-dimensional. Anyway, it was 7 nights of confusing dreams. Coincidence, or maybe not such a coincidence, Norway is world famous for being the place where trolls exist. Trolls in Nordic literature and their mythical culture are creatures that live between 1,000 and 12,000 years. They are evil, grotesque, stupid, feed on coal, have a little tail like an animal, huge ears and nose, and walk around in tattered clothes. Once during World War II, a reconnaissance plane managed to photograph a troll over 150 meters tall in Norway. Thousands of people living in Norway believe they have seen these beings and strongly believe that they really exist and that they are beings from other dimensions, but from time to time these dimensions cross. In other words, ours with the trolls. And then they come from there to here, and we can also go from here to there. And it's precisely when these dimensional portals open that these trolls are seen. So now let's go back to my breakfast. Well, we started walking around the city to look for the bakery. And we started to notice strange things in the city. The first thing I quickly noticed was the number of hair salons that exist in that place. It's worth remembering that we were in a small town. Tromsø is the largest city in northern Norway, but even so, it's a small city. The population of the entire city is equivalent to just 1 block in New York City. And that's when I started to notice and realize this huge number of hair salons, along with a huge number of optical stores. The hair salons were packed, as if everyone in the city every day had a bizarre need to style or cut their hair. The optical stores, on the other hand, were empty. Look, there's one here. There's another one over there, and come with me. There's one more here, there's one more here. That's 5 already, huh? We walked 10 meters at most. There are 7 in total. 6 here, 1 more across the street. This one's full, that one there. One more, that's 7. There's another one on that corner. Look, here we have one, and over there is another one already. With this little shop here, you have to get close to make sure it's really a hair salon, because otherwise people might say it's not, that you're just filming any store.
It's written Tesserino here, see?
It's written, look, freezer. That's true. We also have that one over there, see? But I went there to avoid washing my hair in the cold. I washed it there to check if the salon was real, and it is, working normally. The lady washed my hair, and it turned out really good. Another one is opening in January 2023. Look. There are just a few, right? So we need more. We have another one here. Look. I've already lost count. I think there are 12 on 1 block. Just 1 walk around the block. Inside the gallery here, there's one more. Look. In the same gallery, there is one more. All of this that I showed you was in just 1 block. And if you look at the image on Google Maps, you'll see that there are many more hair salons. For me, it was the city with the most hair salons I've ever seen in my life. And Carol, why is this important? Why are the hair salons in a city important for the context of this video? Well, because quickly when I saw this pattern repeating, I remembered the game I love to play, SimCity. This game is kind of like The Sims, but this time you're not simulating the life of a family or a person or a house. You're going to simulate a city. It's a whole city in a 3D simulation. Anyone who's played knows what I'm talking about. But basically that's how it is. You have a blank city there, okay? When I arrived, it was all weeds and grass. And you have to zone the areas. So you put green for the residential area, orange for the industrial area, and yellow for the commercial area. Once that's done, you hit play on the simulation and the areas start to develop randomly in a programmed way. However, it's very interesting that the software doesn't know the number of hair salons, for example, that would be needed for a small city. So, since it only knows that building pattern, it starts copying that building pattern throughout the entire city. So, if you pay close attention in the game, SimCity for example, you'll see that on one block there are 10 hair salons, for example 20 optical stores, and that's normal because a computer simulation isn't able to understand what the precise necessary number of hair salons would be for a given population size. Not in such an old game. Maybe in a game today, if that pattern had been programmed into the intelligence that generates the game, maybe it would understand. When you play SimCity, you start to notice that everything is exactly the same. It's all Ctrl-C, of houses and stores and industries. So, in a city from a simulated reality, you really can have 12 hair salons in just one block because the simulation thought it was there, that it would go unnoticed. So when I started to notice these repeating patterns, I began to think that maybe I was trapped in a simulated reality. By the way, I always have this impression of being in a simulation, okay? Not just there in the city I visited, but I have this impression when I'm at home too. But there, with everything happening right in front of my eyes, I said, what? I'm living in a simulation, okay? But this could just be paranoia in my head. But then I started to meet and talk to Norwegians from the people, from the tours I took. I did a whale tour, I did an aurora tour. I'm swimming in the forest, aiming to be minimized. Marcelo. Guys, look, it's a reindeer. It just came over with its friend. I started talking to people. Then the guide asked if anyone had questions. I have a question. Why are there so many hair salons in the city? When I said that, the Norwegian guide, who was born in the city, didn't know how to answer. He said, someone has already asked me that, and several people from the city wonder the same thing. But we don't know what it is. We have no idea why this happens. I even took a tour where I met the Sami people. The Sami people are the Eskimos from that region of the planet, from Lapland, and I also asked the Sami people this question. They couldn't answer me. Things are getting stranger and stranger here, don't you think? I was certain the Norwegian could provide a logical explanation for the events, but I was mistaken. He didn't know the reason why that was happening either. A little before going to Tromsø, I watched that Netflix series called 1899. Have you seen it? I don't want to give any spoilers, but already giving a spoiler, this series tells the story of people who are trapped in a simulation created by a supercomputer from the future. And what you're seeing on your screen right now is the symbol of the company that in the series created this simulation. And now I want you to watch this little video I recorded there. Look at what's here. Isn't it too much of a coincidence that the triangle from the company that created the simulation in the series is also in the city? Obviously, it could just be some bizarre coincidence, but what are the chances of that happening? Stay calm, okay? Because we're just getting started here in this video. The northern lights are the most beautiful and at the same time the strangest phenomenon I've ever had the chance to see in my life. But do you know what a northern light is? Well, the northern lights are a phenomenon characterized by the formation of colorful lights in the sky. The occurrence of this phenomenon is directly linked to the interaction between solar winds and the chemical elements located in the layer of the atmosphere called the thermosphere. The northern lights occur only in the northern hemisphere of the planet. In the southern hemisphere, down in Antarctica, why is it Antarctica and not Antarctica? Because the North Pole is the Arctic and the South Pole is the Antarctic, because it's anti-Arctic. The North Pole was discovered first. In the southern hemisphere, we also have this phenomenon, but down there it's called the aurora australis. The aurora borealis was even mentioned on the Sumerian tablets. How? What do you mean? About 6,000 years ago, the people who lived here already knew about a phenomenon that happens here. How? In Norse mythology, for example, the Vikings believed that the lights of the auroras were reflections from the armor of the Valkyries. The Valkyries are warrior women who protect Asgard. They are Odin's official knights. And that's exactly where Marvel took this story from to create the entire fantastic universe of the Thor movies. It's from a Viking story. Now, for the Sami people whom I mentioned to you are the Eskimos from the Lapland region, in other words, this region of the planet, they believe that the auroras are a bad omen. They believe that the auroras guard the souls of people who have already died. And that's exactly why when these lights are in the sky, they have a superstition of not leaving the house. They stay inside just looking out the window because what if they get taken too, right? We're referring to the traditional Sami culture, specifically the elders. The younger ones don't believe in that. However, National Aeronautics and Space Administration, yes, National Aeronautics and Space Administration itself is convinced that there are real portals in the magnetosphere of our planet. And that these portals would somehow connect our planet to our star. I have another video here on the channel where I talk about this story of the portals, and I'll leave it for you in the card so you can watch it, because I don't think there's room to add more information here. It would get too long. If you don't want to watch that video on the channel, I'll also leave the article from National Aeronautics and Space Administration's official website here in the description, which talks about these portals. So, putting together this idea that science already has about these magnetosphere portals, along with that series I mentioned to you at the beginning of the video, His Dark Materials, and my experience there in the city, I was able to conclude that maybe I really was living in an alternate reality created by a portal. And that these portals could indeed be the Northern Lights. In the Netflix series 1899, there's also a part where a huge fog comes and covers the ship. And this fog is also part of the simulation. There in Tromsø, there was a day when I took a boat and sailed for 3.5 hours to get to a location to see whales. And it was very interesting how a very thick fog covered only the city of Tromsø. And when I left the city, the sky cleared up, everything was beautiful, I could see all the fjords. And when I returned to the city, I went back into this very thick fog, really, really thick. And it was very interesting. Why? Because when I bought this whale cruise, Marcelo said, I don't want to go with you because he gets seasick on boats, and I spent 16 hours on the boat. So that's a long time for someone who gets seasick, right? But I went alone. And then he went to drop me off there at the pier early in the morning. And with all that fog, you couldn't even see the boat that was right in front of us. He said, you got screwed, huh? You bought a whale watching tour on a day when you can't see anything. And I thought, wow, that was really the case? I thought I had really gotten screwed in that situation. I didn't expect to see whales, but that changed when we left the city. The sky and fog cleared up. With all that fog, it felt like I was living inside a Stephen King movie, you know? I mentioned the scary movie The Mist, but I don't want to watch it again. Anyway, why did I tell you the story about the boat? Was it just to show off to say that I saw a whale? It was because something way crazier happened to me on that boat. I'm the kind of person who can't sleep for anything. I can't sleep at all. I can't sleep in any situation. Not even when I'm supposed to sleep. I can actually sleep. And that's exactly why I use a sleep aid, which is melatonin. I take it nightly. It makes me a bit sleepy, so I use that feeling to fall asleep. But for some very strange and much more unexplainable reason than all of this, I got on the boat and felt an uncontrollable sleepiness that I really couldn't control. I fell asleep on the boat. During the 3.5-hour trip there, I slept. And during the 3.5 hours back, I slept too. I put my backpack on a table like this, lay down on top of it like this, and I was out. But just a little before I passed out, when I was still kind of confused about this thing, like, wow, why am I so sleepy? Why am I sleepy? What's going on? I started to see a purple light here right in front of my head. I thought, yeah, guys, that boat thing really messed me up. Look, I don't get sick from nausea, but I do get sick from craziness, I thought. This purple light, it would go like this and it would open and close. When it opened, I could see through it as if it were a mirror. And then there was a moment when it opened really wide, and when it did, I went in. Entering the purple light, I saw, it's strange to discuss this, it's making me dizzy. I saw a lot of people all side by side like this with purple lights here next to their heads. So there was one here, just like yours now, where I put 2 purple lights, but it was really close. The people had their eyes closed with purple lights all lined up. Then I heard a voice coming from this side, speaking directly into my ear. The purple light creates this reality that you're living in, and I fell asleep. When I woke up, I could only think about that. I repeatedly asked about the purple light, unsure if it was a dream. After waking up, I saw the whales, returned, and slept, ending the trip. I know that for everything I experienced, there's a totally logical explanation. But I wanted to bring all this Norse mythology story, tell you what the Northern Lights are, and show the images in a fictional context. In other words, I created a little movie story so I could tell you this story here. Of course, guys, everything I told you really happened to me, and everything I showed you was my real perception of what was happening there. However, when I wrote the script for the video, I set it up so it would feel like a mystery story. And I'm totally convinced that there is a logical explanation for everything I experienced. The high number of hair salons in that town has a logical explanation. There's even a logical explanation for something I haven't told you yet, that every time I walk past a house. When passing by the many little houses, whether driving by bus or by train, I would see them. All the lights were always on, and a television was on. And a man sitting watching television like this in every house, as if it were a SimCity pattern repetition. SimCity way of being, obviously there's a logical explanation for everything I just said here, but you have to agree with me that it's strange. And especially that this whole story here would make an excellent fiction series. An excellent fiction movie. Look, screenwriters, the story is ready right here in this video, you just have to take it and create the characters. I'm saying this because the creators of the series Dark, who are the same creators of this series 1899, they copied the story of 1899 from a Brazilian comic book. Yes, the story is causing a lot of controversy. It's very similar, so you can't really say they invented it. It was really copied. So if in the future a fiction series about the city of Tromsø comes out and has all this context, you'll already know where the screenwriters of Dark or 1899 copied it from. Maybe from this video. The fiction story is complete and contains all necessary elements. You could even make a continuation of 1899 there in the city. All that's missing is for someone to say action and start filming because everything is already ready. But, Carol, I still don't understand the purpose of this video. Did you just want to make up a little fiction story and tell us all this? And what's going on? Who are you? No, right, guys? I always have a purpose behind things here, and the purpose here is more mysterious than anything I ever experienced in that city. I made this video here so you can start paying attention to the signs that life gives you. Because yes, there are many signs that are programmed here inside this real matrix that we live in. These signs, they show us that everything we experience is not just in a specific city, okay? But everything I'm living now and what you're living there, watching me, all of this that we experience is a very well-made illusion. I'm convinced, very convinced after this experience I went through that all of this here is an illusion. Especially after my experiences in that city, I'm convinced that everything here is an illusion. When I did the interview with Jan Valilan, who's here on the channel, I'll leave it in the card, he made it very clear that the spirit that animates him, in other words, someone else is animating this character that's here. And all of this started to make much more sense to me after this experience I went through. So there are symbols that are placed not randomly to awaken us. And the symbol that awakened me was that triangle there in the city. That's why I made this video. I made this video to tell you all to pay close attention to the symbols placed in your lives. Pay close attention to things that sometimes you dream about and then they happen. To things that you think will happen one way and then they actually happen. Is that just the law of attraction? Or is it already written by a giant script of a huge screenplay that we call life? But there are so many other names for it, and I'll leave it here with this video, okay? Telling you that although the plot of this video is fictional, meaning I created it based on the experiences I lived through, there's a lot of truth in here. I hope you were able to get the essence out of this fiction series. And I'll see you then in our next videos. Goodbye!